so
I'll
much.
just make sure you're running and then you should be fine.
All right, great, thanks. We're waiting on Mr. Bill.
Okay,
And if anybody flash back to Saturday Night Live, Mr. Bill.
Yeah, remember that?
We are online, so hopefully I'm amusing somebody in the audience.
It's okay. It's okay to be a
Well, we
little
were
funny.
all fans.
Yeah, I didn't think you were gonna print out the zoning regulations.
Not all of them, but I just wanted that one section.
Yes.
That's the only one that we really need.
Yep.
And I was hoping that they would come out a little bit earlier than they did, but
I thought it was longer than
yeah, like 200 pages.
It's,
200-something pages,
at a
yes.
certain point I stopped.
It was three pieces of paper when it started, in 1964
Really?
or something. 3 pieces of paper.
How it's grown.
Now it's volumes.
Paid by the page.
Well, we're gonna go by official iPhone time. It's 7 o'clock on the dot.
It is.
I thought it was early.
So I'd like to call to order the August 8th, 2024 meeting of the Redevelopment Agency of East Haddam. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you don't mind. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I think you were all received the minutes from the last meeting in your packet. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments, additions, deletions, revisions, omissions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Before we move on to the workshop on developing the vision statement, I'd just like to get a motion to have item 3, which is about the environmental consultant selection process. I'd like to have a motion to move that to the end of the meeting in executive session.
Make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Okay, with that, I will yield the floor to Caitlin.
Okay, awesome. So I have a couple slides here just to help us organize and structure our conversation today, and to have some of the most salient points from the materials that were shared in advance in front of us. I think, after some conversation in our last few meetings and with the executive committee, it seems like we are at a moment where it will be very productive for us in the long run to go back a few steps as an agency and do something that I think we sort of inadvertently skipped early in our life as an agency, which is to talk together, like create some space in one of our meetings today to talk about the sort of foundational guiding principles for this project and what we each understand to be some of the most important goals and our vision, our collective vision for the village. We've talked a lot about the need for a clear and organized and efficient process by which we move in the direction of that destination. But I think I am of the strong opinion that that process will be more productive and more efficient and get us there in a clearer way when we have made the space to develop a shared vocabulary for like what it is that we're actually talking about. So I think we can focus today's conversation a little bit of like a workshop. I brought some sticky notes. I brought some big paper for us to write on. I think we can treat it as a little bit of a workshop, and we can focus our conversation around the why and the what of this project, what the guiding principles and goals are, what our shared vision is for the village, and I think a little bit about evaluation criteria, how we measure success. I think what we don't need to cover in today's conversation is the process by which we will get there. That's something that I am excited to try to help develop with the executive committee, and that we will be able to talk more about in our next few meetings. So the goals for today are to align as a group around our collective vision for the downtown area, but I also think that that is not just like an effort unto itself. It also, what that does is it helps us document measurable progress for the people that are tuning into this process and who want to know what we're accomplishing and how. And I think it'll really streamline the process for us as an agency moving forward. And it's also going to help us organize the material that will structure the upcoming SHPO grant that we just received, the planning process that grant will entail. So after today's workshop, just to sort of outline what I think comes next, the executive committee is going to work to outline a draft of 12-month work plan. I don't know, maybe 2 years. We can talk about that. And that'll have, as we've talked about in past meetings, committee-specific goals and milestones that then we can all talk about and review and edit together as a group in our next meeting, which I think is September 5th. Also, after today's meeting, the executive committee is going to outline a draft process for receiving and or soliciting future proposals from developers that we will also review as a group. And we're going to begin the RFP process for this planning consultant. That's something that we talked about in last month's meeting. So there are a few inputs to this discussion, which were emailed around to everybody before today's meeting. The RFP or RFQ to developers was issued in 2019. The East Haddam Plan of Conservation and Development was issued in 2019, and the zoning regulations were recently updated in 2023. And I thought we might start this workshop discussion just with like a quick sort of pull from these documents that I think are, some of the values and goals that are stated in these documents, which are important for us to have in the fronts of our brains, I think, as we have this conversation and workshop, but I think should not be limiting. I think that there is room for improvement in what is listed as the vision and goals for this project in each of these documents, and I can talk a little bit more about why I think that is. But again, just for the sake of having them in the front of our mind, I thought we might, I'm assuming everybody read every word of these in preparation for the meeting, but I did think it was worth us just quickly refreshing our collective memory about what is in each of these documents as it relates to the vision for the downtown area. So in the developer RFQ, there are 6 project guidelines listed. I know we're all familiar with these because we've seen this document a million times, but the aesthetics, economic development, roadway and traffic flow, parking, natural resources, and community involvement are the 6 sort of buckets or themes that are identified as guidelines. I think we can talk a little bit about the difference between goals and principles. And I think that distinction will help us in this conversation. And I think that there's a little bit of blurriness or ambiguity in these between what is like a principle by which the project is developed and what is a goal of like what it entails, but we can come back around to that. In the plan, yeah.
May I ask a question?
Of course, please.
My thought in going through these,
Yeah.
because I've been pushing this for a long time, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's go back, look what was done, and if there are things in past work documents that are useful and we can agree with, let's incorporate them, let's use them. So my thought was, going through this vision statement, I would like to see if everyone agrees with it or disagrees with it and why, so we can get some groundwork going.
That's what we're going to do in the second part of this discussion. I think that
Sorry.
No, it's okay. That's I totally agree with you. And I think that my sense is that that will be more productive once we've each taken a few minutes with our stack of sticky notes to write down our own, like sort of coming at this with fresh perspective on what each of our individual visions and goals are for it, that then will aggregate into something a list that we develop together that we can compare and contrast to this existing document. So I definitely think that that's a key part of the discussion. The Plan of Conservation and Development lists a few overarching community goals. Also, I'm sure we've all seen this before, but they are compatible with and similar to, but slightly different from in certain ways, the vision that was in the RFP. The overarching community goals listed in the Plan of Conservation and Development are to ensure the community's longstanding value of preserving the town's rural character, to protect East Hatham's landscape, natural environment, to prepare for changing demographics through a range of housing options, to provide quality facilities for education, community recreation, and emergency services, to maintain the quality transportation system and improve the variety of choices, to position East Hatham to grow and maintain the town's quality of life, and to encourage continued regional cooperation and partnerships in economic development. I think that I also wanted to pull one, like a fourth input into this discussion, which is very delayed on the screen. There it is. And that is the grant submission that our grant writers sent to SHPO, to the State Historic Preservation Office, in response to the state and planning survey and planning grant opportunity, which we were recently awarded. I think that there is some good language in here, and I'm glad that I read it, and maybe we all should read it, because I think that this helps give us a couple new things that were not in that original vision statement that might be worth incorporating into our thinking. So our grant writing team said in response to the question, what goal and/or objective of the SHPO statewide plan will this project address? They pulled out the fourth statewide goal that SHPO has stated, which is to develop a resiliency strategy for historic resources. And the I think fifth was to promote sustainability solutions for historic properties. Those are stated priorities of SHPO that our grant is in response to. And I think it's interesting to think about how we would incorporate that into our vision. And again, I just feel it's helpful for us to have this in front of us based on where we are in the process. The grant asked, what specific activities will you carry out with the grant funds? And our submission says that that obviously there will be a $15,000 grant with a $15,000 match. We knew that, but that the funds will be used to hire a community planning and urban design firm to guide the town through the process of recreating a development plan. This will include engaging the public to understand issues and concerns, developing alternatives, and further refining the town's chosen alternative and creating an implementation plan. So I think it's helpful for us to have that in front of us, or at least I find it helpful to have that in front of us, because it gives us, what we are doing in today's conversation is getting ourselves organized and clear to be able to clearly and efficiently administer that process with the planning firm that we bring on board through an RFP process. The deliverables as part of this grant are listed as a redevelopment plan. Obviously, we knew that, but that's going to include maps and drawings and renderings and recommendations, along with the implementation plan that they already mentioned. And it says here that the ultimate success will be dependent on more effectively and iteratively engaging residents and community stakeholders in the process through charrettes. So this is sort of like the process that we are embarking on by receiving this grant. And I think we're going to do a lot of good groundwork for that process today. Yeah, no, go for it.
Would we be required to preserve those buildings that are down there?
No, my understanding, which could be wrong, but I don't think is that that's not a requirement, that this is like a very upstream planning grant that is meant to ask like big structural questions about what's possible, and that all of there are no limitations to what is proposed in that implementation plan just because the grant is coming from SHPO.
Okay, because the language is a little confusing there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I take historic properties to mean just like the general goal of bringing historic properties up to contemporary sustainability standards is think one of their key priorities.
Thank you.
Other questions?
It's kind of like saying brownfields without saying brownfields.
Right. Okay, so here's the part where I think we should take a pen and paper and our sticky notes and spend maybe 10 minutes writing some of our own ideas here about what the guiding principles, goals, and vision are for the town, and that going around and putting our sticky, like affinity mapping our stickies is going to give us, I think, a really strong foundation to move forward from here. So the goal, I know I've said this, but just to reiterate, the goal is not that we come to some sort of magical level of alignment where we all perfectly agree on everything. That's not necessary or possible, but just that we are talking about what our like developing a shared vocabulary for what we actually want to see downtown, and then the process by which we get there, I think, is going to be a lot more clear.
Caitlin, would you distinguish, you mentioned it in the beginning, the difference that you see between the goals and principles?
Yes. So in my mind, and it's easy to talk ourselves sort of in circles when we do exercises like this, but in my mind, principles are values. Like, what values do we bring to the project? And goals are objectives. What can it accomplish? So to give an example, a principle might be that this project is place-specific, that it honors the unique qualities of our town. That's like a value. That's something that would be infused through every decision that's made about a successful and viable project for our downtown area. A goal is more of like an objective. We want to improve roadway and traffic flow. That's a goal. That's not it's not a value, right? It's not like a principle. It's a objective. Does that make sense as a distinction? And we can talk about it a little bit as it's not like we don't have to over-rotate on
So
that.
if I were to look at some of the things that I've seen either in the Plan of Conservation and Development or the RFQ, one could almost say that we kind of have them kind of intertwined.
That's exactly right. I agree with that. I think that there's a little bit of an ambiguity between, or there's like a false equivalency being drawn between values that should drive the process and goals or objectives for what it is that we want to accomplish. And I think that distinguishing between those two things helps us create the right amount of like flexibility within a range of possible outcomes, and not over prescribing too early in the process what exactly the solution is.
So as a way of maybe for all of us to just keep our creative thinking open, just put down whatever you think, and then we can maybe distinguish it between a goal and a value later.
Well, I think we'll do that a little bit as we're just talking about it. Are there any other questions? Or does this, I think we can maybe spend just like 10 minutes writing things down ourselves, and then half an hour or so talking about it, and then I'll be able to
So
document
what would you expect our answers to look like?
No, right.
Not that you need to tell us.
It's on an orange sticky. Here, just pass these around. I brought a few markers, but I know people also have pens.
We could split this guy.
Here, I can just.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now you have two.
How many stickies would
We
you
have
like?
one for goals and one for principles.
So I think just
Ankle-me goals.
keep an open
You
An
guys
open
good?
brain.
Anybody need a pad?
Play two?
You could play.
Thank you.
and like ask just it really is, I feel like, a step that we have skipped, asking ourselves what we think the guiding principles and goals of this project are feels like something that it's good for us to just spend a minute thinking about.
You ask hard questions.
I know, right?
Hey, we're
It'd be long answers.
we're gonna go through it. I'm setting a timer.
Okay.
Caitlin, I'm having trouble trying to decide if we're writing things like our vision, or I can't get through this principle thing.
I think don't worry about it I think so. There's two columns. One is like the why. Why do we want to do something amazing in our little downtown.
Okay, that's a good approach.
And what? Like, what is our vision for what it should be?
Why and what?
Why and what?
Okay.
Is that a helpful?
Yeah, no, that is helpful, thank you.
I think this is one of those things where there's no wrong answers.
No, of course. And the more, the better, right? The more stickies we have that we can.
Yeah, because we're gonna probably uncover something that we didn't even recognize before. So no one's wrong, nothing's wrong.
Nothing, yeah, no.
Can we put in our dream development?
Please.
Yes, no, and I think writing, that goes in the what column. Like, what would comprise a dream development to you is something that we should outline, we should document.
Hey, you two, stop cheating.
You're the proctor?
Where am I?
I'm gonna go back to my old school strategy of having terrible penmanship so nobody can read it.
Oh, yeah, and you're not
Can't
graded
spell
on
words
spelling
and
either.
the whole
I'm the
thing
worst
comes
speller in
play
the
here.
world, so you're definitely not graded on spelling. And the only person that has to be able to read it is you.
Me? No.
Or
you.
everyone has to be able to read their own.
here? Afraid to touch it. There you go. No worries.
Gotcha. Okay, don't worry, there's only 2 more minutes.
Longest 10 minutes of my life.
Feels like we're in exams.
I know.
It's not meant to,
Pulls down.
it's not meant to be stressful.
Thank you.
That's wrecking my brain, that's enough.
We need Jeopardy music.
When you do this on Zoom, there is like a feature where you can play music in the
Oh, yeah.
background, so people have something to like. I should have brought my boom box.
When Homer did this, we get a lot more, I think. Okay. How fast can we do it?
Okay,
Pencils down.
Jackie's still going. You could, I'm not.
Thoughts are just starting to come.
That's
Jackie, you've
great.
been
Keep
busy.
going. Keep going. We can.
Bill, you don't get overtime for writing more stuff.
And we're gonna start with
Pay
you.
is just as good,
We're
right?
gonna start with you too.
Oh well, I was going to offer to go first. but
Okay, you
Bill-
can go
but
first.
I
Bill-
have no problem
Bill
going
can-
first. Yeah. Let me finish my last thought here.
Okay. Yeah, everyone finish your last thought. for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna copy a lot of people on this. Could I have another tab?
I'm going to steal all. I'm going to confiscate all of the.
good.
Post-it.
Okay. And do you want these? Are you collecting them?
I think we can put them up, and then we'll have them consolidated, and I will document them.
I just free thought, so I'm not sure which is
I know,
a
it's
goal
like
or a
free
principle,
thought.
so I'll just.
Aren't we supposed to
Okay.
say them or something?
Here, you keep them, and then I can put them up.
Yeah, you want me to read them first? and
Yeah,
then-
yeah. I think we should go around the room and
Yeah,
present
yeah,
them.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, I'll start with my finance board hat on. East Hatham's budget is growing faster than our grand list. A well-designed development will bring in property tax revenue and encourage future development.
That's why.
That's the goal. That's a
That's
good
the,
one.
that's the why.
Yeah.
I put down balanced project, not too much and not too little. And then I wrote, it's a unique piece of property, and then we have just one chance to get it right. And the last one is, I think it encompasses an area beyond the municipal property. So, I don't know where they all go,
you.
but that's my thinking.
All right, who's next?
If we're going around like a clock, I guess it's him.
Yeah, we are. That's what we always do. We pick one side of the room and go around the table.
The heck?
So I have developed the town property with the right balance of commercial, restaurants, and residential apartments that meet the needs and wants of the community. The key there is, let's not overdo it.
Yeah, see, this is why this is so good, because Bill had something really similar. Balanced project, not
It does.
too little.
While preserving the historic feel and expanding the value and utility of the space. That's it.
I like that value utility.
No wonder it took you guys so long. You wrote full sentences.
Don't worry.
Okay, why? To bring to life the beauty the town has to offer, bring back to life the dormancy, to create a desired area for town residents and out-of-townspeople to congregate and visit and enjoy. The dormancy is deafening. We need to open up and create, expand, and sculpt all that the area has to offer. Wasted space needs to fill in the gaps and open the doors. Why? Why not? It's shameful. Why can't we accomplish this, and why has it dragged on so long, going nowhere? The time has come to allow the tax base to expand and the population. That's the why.
A lot of hard work on this side of the table, guys.
And then the why, what? As Riley first proposed, mixed use, residential, commercial, and retail. It's all there. It was once there, but seems to have died an unfortunate death. A conglomerate of groups working together who have the professional expertise and know-how to move this forward. We, as the Redevelopment Agency, provide as facilitators.
Awesome.
Very good.
Okay. This is mixed use, which is theme. Okay, we'll go. Mine are not full sentences.
Fair enough.
Okay, so I think that a principle that I used as an example is that this project needs to be place-specific, unique to our unique little town. I think it needs to be feasible and set up to succeed, but it also needs to be ambitious and future-facing. I think that the project needs to reflect the varied voices of our townspeople and needs to honor our historical legacy. This is sort of in this category, grouping them as I go. We need to ensure diverse economic development opportunities through the project. And then, I mean, this is a what, but we need to improve roadways, traffic flow, and basic safety.
I forgot about that.
We need to increase and integrate parking in our downtown area. We need to preserve natural resources and the connection to the river, which is so unique. And we need to ensure community integration throughout the process.
You did this at home.
I know.
I had them on my, I was thinking.
She might do this for a living, I don't know.
Exactly. And then a few more whats, like these are the actual the programs, residential mix, that one's already been talked about. I think we'll all probably say that. Unique and feasible, like diverse mixed use, that's very broad, but important. We need to be able to attract restaurants, cafes, and retail, which is related to that unique and feasible mixed use. And I think we need to support the theater and arts ecosystem in the downtown area.
Good luck, Andrew.
And then I didn't.
Got more.
She got more, she got more.
I'm not going next. Randy is.
I didn't prompt. This might be a little bit cheating. I didn't prompt us all to think about how we measure success, just because it felt like 2 questions was enough for our first round. But I do think that starting to talk about what impact measures we want to like stress test with our incoming planning consultant, whoever they are, is really important. So I will throw a few out there and then maybe we can add to this list in a future meeting. But I think and these are just like literally evaluation criteria, like what can we measure that will benchmark our success on this project, like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. Increase, like more visitors to town. Seems like an obvious one. Lots of things to do downtown and like people out on the street doing stuff. That's like something we can literally measure. That's what traffic engineers can measure that. Safety, traffic and pedestrian safety is something we can measure. Thriving stores and restaurants that stay in place for a long time, like longevity of the businesses downtown is something that we can measure. And the success and viability of the arts organizations, most importantly, Goodspeed is something that we can measure. So that just gets the ball rolling on some of the impact measurements.
Would we consider on that list that you just created, instead of just saying we want more people, maybe we want more artsy people?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could, it's like a Venn diagram.
Oh, no,
more
not a
people
Venn
and more
diagram.
art. So
Somebody
wait till
loves
you
those.
see my Venn diagram. Okay,
Randy,
your turn. You
Shame
can't
on you.
skip.
The whys, develop property in a way that benefits all residents of the town. Increase tax revenue, to your point, Bill. Economic development. Improve walkability, to your point. Complement architecture that already exists in the village generally. We do need parking to support anything that goes on down there. And we need to utilize the Connecticut River because of its attraction. And whatever we do needs to take that into consideration. I had house, and now maybe I don't know why I came up with house. Anyway, it needs to be mixed use to attract a wide variety of people. And it needs to create a place that people want to come to.
Great.
Okay. All right, I pretty much go with the vision thing, that's all I am working on. I just had it down as theater, restaurant district, and tourism is really what that is. Maintain the historic character with strict architectural oversight. We've had that Athens on the River thing, which is an old East Haddam thing, and I think that's a winner. The development should provide taxes for the general fund, and access to and from the river should be provided for the public. Mixed-use development is a plan of conservation and development requirement, so residential must be provided along with restaurants and retail shops. So that's all I have there. Vision.
Professor,
Oh.
you wanted to play.
Well, I felt as long as I don't have to pay to play.
That comes later, off the record.
Thank you, Senator Melendez. The first is a repeat of others, is to fit East Haddam's overall character. The second one I had was economically sustainable for the developer and the town. Improve the grand list, which is wearing my hat. And the last one I had was acceptable to the majority of town residents and stakeholders.
Maybe even desirable.
I'm sorry?
Maybe even desirable.
Well, we'll go with acceptable.
Acceptable, okay, acceptable.
He's on the finance board, he knows what that means.
So I didn't fully understand the assignment. All my thoughts are on one piece of paper, so we'll just put that.
That was my problem too, till I rewrote it.
Place for it.
Yeah.
So mine, primary, is reserve the local aesthetic, which I think everybody agrees to. That's my simple word for that. Enhance village commerce, right? It's not just about this piece, it's about everything down there. Expand taxable property, which is consistent with what everybody said. For me, I think we need to focus on tourism. You know, it's like, we need to get people here all the time, and I'll bring that to my dream list at the end. Yeah, so tourism is the answer. It's not going to be industry. It's not going to be Walmart. It's not going to be a data center. It's got to be about people that come here, spend money, and leave. I think we need to focus on the town property first. I think that we need to develop that property first, because if we do something good there, then other things will follow that. And we can't just plan on everything else around it and think that that's going to promote it. We need to have an anchor in that spot. I think we need creative parking solutions. Everybody talks about parking. I think we need to be creative on that. What that means, I don't know, but that's what we need to deal with. My dream is an anchor that would attract people year round, not just when the theater's in progress. And that would be something like, if you know that place down in Saybrook, there was what was it, River's End? You know, it was like an outdoor store where you could have, it's retail, it's an anchor, and it promotes all of the tourism. You know, you could just take a canoe right down to the landing and have canoes. You could have bicycles. You could have, you know, all those sorts of things that would be right there. That would be an anchor. I'm not talking about a Cabela's, but you know, a small shop that would attract people all the time. We also need to have a restaurant, at least one. I don't know that we can support more than another one. Right now, we're not supporting any of them, really, not in a big way. So I don't know that we need to overload on restaurants. We heard the other day that retail, you know, is done, not viable. So, you know, you're talking about personal services, salons and spas and things like that. That could work, you know, if we attract people here. And then, of course, some limited residential. You know, I know that people that that we're talking about housing shortages and people need local, you know, lodging, residences. But I don't know that that's the place to overload our site with residential, which is the trend in other developments around us. Big 3-story, multiple. I mean, I don't know how many units they're putting in Portland. I don't know how many units are across the river, but those are my thoughts.
Can you ask a question on that last topic, just
Yep.
before I lose my train of thought?
Yeah.
Is residential, I know we talk about mixed use, but is residential a requirement? In other words, could we, in the scope of this project, say, maybe we're really not looking to see residential? Maybe we're looking to have residential, maybe at a different location to provide for the residential uses, and then not expect this project to do quite as much as we're expecting, right? That list of all the things that we want are pretty substantial. Can we exclude, we can exclude retail, I'm just wondering, can we exclude residential? We won't necessarily
I don't think you
exclude.
can, because of the plan of conservation development spells it
zoning.
out that it's like a requirement. And zoning's the first thing they look at is, do you comply with the plan of conservation development? So if you don't.
But I mean, if we had a
that could
plan,
be a damn
if we
good
had a
argument why
plan
not.
to develop another residential area as part of the scope of a bigger project, it doesn't have to be there, right? I mean, you kind of see that point, is that.
I understand,
if
there's
we
not a lot of
looked-
room there. But one thing that Riley did that impressed me when I thought the same thing, gee, residential, maybe we shouldn't have required it. But he cleverly fit in like 40 units that everybody boo-hooed, but he did high-end 40 units, and his idea was like half of them would sell, and a lot of people are gonna use them as Airbnbs.
Yeah.
And the idea would be, every week, a new couple comes into a one-bedroom apartment, and they go through all the little shops in the theater and everything, and next week, another couple comes and does it. And even though that's only a component, because 40 isn't gonna, but it would have been, you know, a helpful number, actually.
And I'm
Surprisingly
not
good.
asking us not to consider it, because that obviously sounds really
I mean,
sound.
I was surprised he pulled it off that much, because I was thinking all along, boy, you're asking for a lot in residential, but then he went down to one bedroom. He went 3 stories on the access off Broome, and that gave him first level access off of Broome. It was a pretty smart move that, you know, I was surprised to see.
So I think that is a good question and is something that we will need to both test with our incoming planning consultant based on what I would expect we would ask them to provide, which are like comparable projects, other contexts, relevant examples, precedent projects we can learn from, and also that we would, in theory, eventually one day be workshopping with a developer who can run the numbers on a pro forma to test what is actually financially viable for the project. But I do think that before you jump in, I do think that the higher order question, actually even one step above that in the like hierarchy of questions that we have, is what is the scope of what we're planning for? I mean, I know we have a technical boundary of our redevelopment zone, but that doesn't, I don't think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be thinking holistically about the downtown area, maybe beyond that technical boundary, because as long as it's walkable, I would say, which obviously it is, I would say that like there's nothing precious in my mind about having the residential inside that boundary versus outside that boundary. I think it behooves us to be looking at it a little bit more holistically, I think.
Just want to add one thing before I forget it, is the one thing about residential right now is that's where the money is. And that's the really successful part that I'm pretty sure that any developer is going to want kind of a decent component of that, because that's a sure thing. Right now, residential is the hot market. I mean, retail is what they're struggling to make work at all.
And I think that's a key point, because we want the revenue generated to be steady and constant and every day, and residential is gonna
Right
get
now,
out there.
residential is a winner. I mean, that's just the way the market's working right now. They may overbuild, who knows, and this could be a disaster, but.
Well, that's why this whole concept of balance
Exactly.
is important, so
Right.
I'm not suggesting that we exclude residential, I just wanted to know if we could. And then if so, we do need to strike a balance, because we want a project that's gonna reflect all those other things.
We're kind of now more into the how to satisfy some principles rather than the principles themselves. But if you have guests and your house ain't big enough, where in East Haddam do they sleep?
My mom stayed
Bring
at
a
that
tent, right?
bed and
There's
breakfast.
not nearly enough. I think there's a market for, a need for, put it better, a need for, and not nearly enough. Whether you call it bed and breakfast or residential inn or however you put it to fit the zoning. If I were going to sink some money into that site, that's one of the things I would want to put my money on, is people come, they pay me, they eat, drop their money, and they leave. We're happy. No kids, no school kids, and so on.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of something that we will be able to lean on our future planning consultant to help us understand the market for a little bit better. I mean, obviously, anecdotally, I totally agree with you. And then digging into the numbers a little bit on how that has actually worked as a successful model in other towns or not worked, well, I think will help us. Like you said this at the beginning, but the value of this being mixed use, of it being feasible, of it being resilient and balanced, but also meeting housing demand, like a range of housing demands that we all intuitively feel living here in town, is a perfect example of like, okay, that's what we're solving for. And then we don't actually know the solution yet, because we need a lot more expert input in order to come to an understanding as an agency of what the answer is, like what will work. But we have the sort of like foundational principle of this is why we think that's important and what we think it needs to do. So that's a great example of how I think we can synthesize some of this thinking into principles that will guide that process when we get into it. Are there other, I know we have a few other things on our agenda, so I don't want to run over our time too far, but I mean, I've been jotting down notes as we've been talking about what I see as some of the shared themes here, and I will do some work between now and next meeting to pull this together into like, okay, here's what I heard, and we can workshop and wordsmith
I think
together.
there's a lot of shared themes there.
Yeah, there are, exactly. There are a lot of common elements. But are there other questions or things people feel like we didn't get to, or? that we missed?
If I could,
Of course.
as an overriding theme, kind of understand this, what comes out of this project will be somewhat it'll be providing our consultant and/or any developers some guidance on what we really are thinking.
Yeah.
So if they come to the table with a project, whatever it may be, we could say it kind of conforms with what our overriding, not only the plan of conservation and development, not only the work that was done before, because we won't ignore those, but this sort of kind of guidelines them to know what we're really expecting.
Yeah, exactly. It puts us in a more proactive position, so we're not just trying to react to anybody's idea of what it could be or should be. We're actually guiding the process by saying, here's what it needs to be and why, with a broad range, obviously, of how it gets more specific and more targeted from there. And then people can respond to that instead of the other way around. I think it's.
And then your expectations would be at a future meeting for us to then define the process that, with benchmarks that we will share with any developer that brings a project to the table.
Right, yeah.
Like Jeff Riley, if he came forward today or in the future after we do that meeting, we'll be able to articulate, these are the steps that
Yeah.
you need to go. You send it to planning and zoning, but in addition to that, these are the additional things you should consider doing.
Exactly, and that I think is that's like, okay, great, thank you for this submission. Here's what happens next. It allows us to have a standardized and more efficient process that.
And with both of these tools, and I'm kind of leading you on a little bit with these questions, but with both of these tools, we will then be prepared to start inviting developers to come in and start looking at what we have.
Exactly. And I think another key ingredient, another key tool that I'm excited to try to work with everybody to develop between now and the next meeting, as I said at the beginning, is like, okay, then how do we as an agency get there? How do we construct a 12-month work plan for ourselves where we are clear about what milestones we need to hit and what tasks each committee is prioritizing and things like that. Like we're sort of working backwards into, okay, these are our priorities for the next 12 months or 18 months or whatever, however long we want to try to project out.
6 months.
Once we have that vision fleshed out, the historical documents that we have and all that work that have been done in the past, I think will be very helpful, kind of backfilling.
Yeah, they're the appendix. Yeah, but we have something that feels current and it feels consistent and it has
We're not
our.
reinventing the wheel.
Right.
Yeah, we're both respecting all the work that was done in the
Yes.
past, because it was done, there were years of that. And it's all good stuff, and as I read through it, I'm like, yeah, these are all make sense. And we're just adopting, in some ways refreshing to what we have to work with.
Exactly. Are there other questions or thoughts that people feel like we missed? Because if not, what I'm gonna do next is take all of this content from today and document it, type it out, synthesize it, and do a first pass at like the affinity mapping of here are all the similar things, here's how things group, here are some of the themes, and then we'll have a draft set of guiding principles, goals, and objectives for ourselves that we can then wordsmith and collaborate on finalizing as a
Good
group.
luck reading through all those.
I can do it.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you so much for doing that.
Of course.
That's really, really helpful. I appreciate your work. Thanks.
Of course, thank you.
All right, so let's move on. Let's put, I think we will put environmental at the end for executive session. So is there other business that people, I wanted to leave this open-ended. So if there are things that people want to bring up, let's bring them up.
We had on there, I know about the TIF that was to be reviewed, and then I don't know, I see Tom's not here tonight, but I mean, is that something we should be dealing with
We can
today?
talk about that, certainly.
I did realize that TIF policy ends up looking like it's gonna be for Moodus or the Four Corners rather than the village, and why are we spending our money on it? Because the next blast is $17,000. It's not
Yeah,
like
almost
$10
$18,000.
I mean, it's not a small amount of money, which we need for our own, if we're talking about developing a vision and stuff, then we want to get a planner or something like that so we can put together a master plan of some sort. I mean, why spend that money on, if somebody wants to
We have all the background for it.
want to
They have all
develop
the
a TIF for
information.
Moodus, then get a redevelopment agency and they'll go ahead and do it. But Why are we funding?
Well, there was a couple of points, I could address those concerns. First, you're making the assumption that we're not gonna do a TIF at all in our district. And that may be true. However, in the absence of a policy, we definitely are not. So by not spending that money to do the expanded policy, we're going to have to reinvent the wheel if we did have an opportunity to do a TIF. In the project as it looks right now, with the 2.5 acres or whatever we have, there's not a lot of TIF revenue, right? So it's not necessarily viable based on what, you know, where I think we've gone. But if we were to look at outside the scope of that with some of the other stakeholders, there could be opportunities to actually use it in there. And then by having this policy, it would extend to those other places within the town by having the policy. So even though it comes out of our budget, we also, we're extending it, it's coming out of the town's budget in essence, and it's extended out. We were not gonna get that money back if we don't spend it, right? It was allocated for the purpose of developing the TIF. So we let that go, it's kind of, we're not getting it back, I'm using it for something else. We're really not using it. And then the money, we're gonna have to figure out other uses for monies. In other words, that was given to our budget, to our team to budget for, and we would lose that money later on.
But what are you gonna learn from this TIF policy that you don't already know? Because I don't see anything in this TIF policy that's gonna tell me anything I don't already know about the way a TIF operates. You read all about it.
We're not gonna learn anything, we're gonna establish, it's gonna be a formal written
Why
policy.
develop a policy that, the way it looks to me is you're not gonna end up with it in the village, because the areas that you want to expand to, they don't have any development potential. I mean, Main Street certainly doesn't, all the way down to the Champion House or Landing Hill. What's down there is all residential,
right.
pretty much built out.
There's no increment.
Ray Hill, the minute you get past the package store, there's only that one little cottage on the left, and the rest is owned by the Goodspeed. I mean, you know, that's kind of built out. What are we gonna do there? Down to the airport? Once you, I mean, we have Williams Chevrolet, and that included in our little area, and that's clearly could be something. The rest of it is in the floodplain and wetland areas. I mean, I don't know how developable that is. And we know the airport, I mean, he put down that the airport has deed restriction. Now it's got conservation restrictions, 2 of them. So it's, you're not doing anything with that airport. That would be a major battle that would go on for years before you could ever do anything, if you were gonna do something with the airport. And right now, that's going nowhere. So going down there doesn't do anything for us. I don't
We
see the
haven't
village doing-
engaged in conversations with other stakeholders. And
Well,
those other stakeholders may wanna
You
walk
want to
away
wait to
from the
make a
property.
decision after we meet with all the stakeholders, because I know that's coming up shortly, soon, right? We're going to meet with stakeholders in the area before.
Well, I think the stakeholders that I think would be most interested would be EDC and, you know, the town itself as to whether or not they want to move forward with that. I mean,
We have to talk with the Gelston House too. I mean, not the Gelston House, the Goodspeed. We have to talk
That's
with the
fine.
Goodspeed. They're the biggest stakeholders in
fine,
the
but
neighborhood.
I agree with Jim, is that we shouldn't be spending $18,000 to develop a policy that really isn't going to work for us. If it works for other people, that's great, but I'm looking at it for our agency. And I think that there's other things that we can spend the money on.
I
For
think
example,
right now,
this is
I
a-
think right now, though, I think
matching
I would
grant.
think it not be a good decision to make a decision at present without all of the financial facts. I don't have them right now, and so I wasn't anticipating this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have been prepared to defend the position that I think we should do this. I think we're gonna lose money that we already have allocated. And so it's
But
money,
you-
we're
yeah,
arguing about,
it's going
we're
back into the
discussing
general
something
fund.
that probably is going to be, we're not gonna benefit from any, in either case, right? So I would offer, maybe we bring it up at our next meeting
That's
to
fine.
discuss it further.
That's fine.
Because in
But if we
lack of
could-
preparation and know the numbers of what's gonna happen with the funding that we're discussing right now, we might be walking away from some work and things that we've done that we're frankly not paying for. It might be coming out of ARPA money that we're gonna be utilizing anyway, and it might be benefiting the town. So these funds might just disappear on us if we don't use them.
The point is, they don't disappear. They're just going back in the general fund. Nobody knows that better than you, and that's us. So we still have our money.
But that by the same logic, we are benefiting Four Corners and the Muda Center. So
we're
we
not
might
the
be benefiting them too by establishing
Them,
this.
we're the redevelopment agency for the village. Why are we can't even get anything done here. Why are we starting to?
Because we'll have another
Spend
arrow,
money.
we'll have another arrow in our quiver of money that we may not have, right? I'm just following your rationale for money going to the general fund. It's also benefiting the rest of the town. And just because we got to keep be mindful of, we're definitely focused on this project, but we want to be mindful of the town in general. We don't want to unnecessarily spend money. I'm completely in agreement with that. But these funds can be benefited later on, or they're going to have to spend them later at a higher price. We did a lot of the legwork, so maybe we just get the policy in place, and that will make it easier for them when they have to do their part. And that's the only reason I'm asking us to
I'm not even a believer that a
defer.
TIF would work in the Four Corners or the or Mudis. Mudis is huge compared to what we have, but it doesn't have sewer, doesn't have water. It's got a lot of limitations, even if you went residential anywhere. You can't build some really big apartment house, I mean, because you've got all the sewer restrictions. I mean, there's a lot of, and you don't have a lot of undeveloped land up there. That's why it's spread like it is, because it doesn't have water or sewer. I mean, I don't know, I'm not, this whole TIF thing to me is one of these things where you get, I mean, they're creating work for themselves down the road, come on. This thing's gotta be monitored, there's reports that come out, your financial reports, I mean, just to create the policy, I think he mentions our town attorney several times, then it has to go to the public, that could end up being a vote. I mean, there's thousands more dollars being spent. It's the same amount of money. That's one thing about the TIF. It doesn't make any money for you, but it definitely has a spot where you're spending. And I mean, I just assume not spend it.
Randy?
I agree with Jim. I think we need to refocus. I know you've done a lot of work, Bill, but the work that's been done by Camoin may be beneficial. There's information in there that they've gathered. They've talked to various people. There may be good stuff in there, but I can't see spending more money. I'd rather see if there's money allocated that won't be spent on the TIF if we don't go any further with it, it can be reallocated for some other purpose to us. But we need to refocus. We need to, I think what we did tonight is a good start to refocus, but I can't support the TIF any more than what we've done so far. And I'm not even sure that it may have been a mistake to begin with.
So I'll just add to that, I mean, the grant that we got, the $15,000 grant, is a match. So we could take that $18,000 and throw it onto that. We wouldn't have to go back to the town. We would reallocate the TIF policy money into pursuing the grant, which is, to me, far more beneficial than chasing the TIF further.
I mean, basically, when you look at what Camoin's statement was, the first thing he said is, if you just have the map that you've got, you don't have enough. And basically, the areas he talks about expanding to, I mean, he was hoping there's more usable area, and I understand that. If we had usable area, it might work, but there's really nothing to develop in some of these areas. Heading out to Ray Hill, forget that. Going down to the airport, I mean, maybe if you think the parking lot of the Goodspeed can become a hotel on stilts or something, but that's really,
Parking underneath.
What
well,
if
I mean, I'm not saying that these things are impossible. I'm just saying, wow, you're.
Goodspeed owns a lot of property down there, and if they ever decided they were willing to sell or to help develop it, it would provide a huge resource for us.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just thinking, wow, we're way out there with this thing. I mean, initially, we're talking about a project that's supposed to give us back money. If we developed everything in the village with Riley's first plan, it only brings in $200,000 a year approximately, maybe more at the rate we're going, but that's if you took 100% of the money. And I'm sure the townspeople are just thrilled with the idea that 100% of the tax money we're generating from this land we've been trying to promote for increasing the grand list, that you'd have to take 100% to do anything with. And how many years would you have to accumulate money at that rate to pay for even sidewalks?
Well,
Just
do the math on it.
like
Let's
that.
just say you took 25% to the town, and that would leave, on your math,
Yeah.
$150,000. So that would be $1.5 million over a 10-year period. These generally last longer than that time horizon. So given where you're looking, there's a significant amount of money. That's real money, right? That's real money. And the difference, of course, is we won't have to go to the developer and give him the land away for free. I mean, that was the original plan, I remember, as on the finance board, that we were gonna give it to Riley.
That was his first
And that was not gonna
request.
sell at all. And so under a TIF arrangement, we could have him purchase the property and then commit future tax revenues in the form of helping out with the project. And that's why just having it available, not understanding the scope of what it can possibly do, and not having it available, given as much work as we do, I think it would just be foolish. I mean, we've gone so far along. And then to make the point that if the town could benefit, but we're not benefiting, I think we'd be hurting the town. We should ask them. We should ask all the leaders, would you, if this would benefit the town, it may not necessarily benefit us to the extent we want, but if it benefits the town, wouldn't it be a good idea to do it? Would you support us on it, maybe give us some budget money for it?
But it's a maybe thing for everybody. It's,
It is absolutely,
you know,
but.
I mean, it's not one hard, fast thing, well, it'll definitely be good for Moodus or something. I mean, we don't even know if it would work there. You start looking at the properties that are there and what the development's gonna be, and you go, there's not a lot of vacant lots. I mean, in the Moodus area, depending on what you include in the TIF, but the areas we're thinking about, William F. Palmer and all that, I mean, and Main Street, I mean, 149 or 151 right there, there's not a lot that can be built. Just look at it. I mean, the other side of the river where the town used to be, we're definitely not building there. I don't know, I wouldn't spend the money on it, because to me, we got other places to spend the money, where we know we will get benefits, and we need to spend the money there.
Jim, do you recall if the Riley plan included a TIF district?
Not his original, because no one was talking about that through revitalization. This only got going after our redevelopment showed up. And I'm not against TIFs in general, but you look at the TIFs that are out there, they're gigantic, and that's why they work. I mean, Cheshire's got 600 acres in their district. East Windsor's got 4,000 residential units being built as part. That's just the residential component of their development. We're talking mass. No wonder the money works. And they can take percentages of the tax money, and it's an earmarking system. And then the money you're spending to create the TIF, which is probably the same that we would spend, doesn't matter, because it's a minuscule amount compared to, let's say, millions in taxes.
And not arguing anything that you said. You're correct on all counts. I'm just asking, when it gets to the point when we have to negotiate with that developer and we got to do something, where are we going to get the funds? Where are we going to be able to come to the developer who's looking for the improvements that Riley had looked for when he was bringing the project? Where do you suggest we in this little town go get the funds?
That's an interesting thing, because John and I had those interviews with the consultants, and a lot of discussion went on. And one of the things they said is you have to have carrots for the developer. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Because we finally ran into one of them that wasn't too big on the TIF thing, because didn't think it was beneficial. He said, well, you gotta have a carrot. And I said, well, what if you went to your finance board and earmarked money on a yearly basis to be set aside for, let's say, streetscaping or whatever, sidewalks. We own the sidewalks, we're gonna have to fix them anyway. And they said, well, that's a carrot, that's how it works. I said, what about a simple tax abatement system? 10% for 10 years, something simple that everybody understands and moves forward on. Another carrot. Those are the kinds of things, because we're looking at a really small development. I mean, wait till the developers look at it, because it's small. You can't fit a lot in there if you, I mean, Riley fit in everything you could fit in on his first concept, and people didn't like it. Not everybody, mind you, but I mean, people felt it's a little overdone. Fine.
Take a time out for a second. Did you have information that you wanted to
I
share?
wanted to explain ARPA funds to you,
Okay,
so that you understand, they do not go back to the general fund. The ARPA funds, like, you were allocated 2 pockets of ARPA funds for capital projects that you put in, that during the budget season, they opted to fund those through ARPA. One was they gave you $60,000 to do the TIF. The other is they gave you $75,000 for environmental work. Now, the trick with ARPA is those funds have to be committed to a project by December 31st, 2024. And when I say committed, I don't mean, well, 60,000, we're probably gonna use that for a TIF. Has to be a purchase order with a contract. So out of this, using the TIF as an example, you had 60,000, your contract, phase 1, phase 2 with Camoin totaled approximately 40, rough numbers, $42,000. So already you have a difference between 42,000 and 60,000 that you need to allocate somewhere. If you don't pick somewhere for it to go, have a contract and have it like what I call shovel ready, a purchase order cut to a company to do something, that money, it has to be allocated. So the town will take that money and allocate it somewhere else so we don't lose the ARPA funds. Because if we don't spend the ARPA funds, all of them haven't allocated, it goes back to ARPA. It doesn't go back to our general fund.
Could we use it as the matching for the
That's
grant?
what we were talking about. We kind of earmarked in the background, but we needed you guys, remember, Bill, we had this conversation that you guys had till September to make a decision on your 2 pots of money in ARPA. Are you gonna use them or are you not gonna use them? Because if you're not gonna use them, the town's gonna take them, allocate it to something else, so we don't give ARPA funds back. And we have to allocate them by December 31st, 2024. They don't need to be spent. Like if you have a purchase order for a project that's gonna take you 2 years, they have to be spent by December of 2026. So right now, of the $42,000 you have for the contract with Camoin, you've only used, what was it, 18,000 or something like that?
yeah.
So you still have that difference in money too. So you've still got a lot of money out there in the TIP that needs to be decided by next month. Or do you have something solid that can get reappropriated to? Now, yes, the matching, we already kind of earmarked that, but unfortunately, we received nothing in writing of your award other than Victoria's email that, oh, I heard from SHPO that you're getting the award. We've got nothing. We don't have an award letter. We don't have a contract. If we can get an award letter, and then what are you gonna do with it? You've gotta then pick a developer, because then we have to cut a purchase order to that developer to expense that money to. We can't just say, oh yeah, it's earmarked for $15,000 for grant matching, but grant matching to who? So that's the dilemma that you're being faced with over the next 3 months. Or else that money goes back into the pot and they're gonna buy some one-time item that's, say, maybe in capital, so we don't lose the ARPA.
Yeah, they're gonna pave Alger Road.
Well, they're gonna use, because already, I'll give you an example. They earmarked some radio project money out of ARPA, $287,000. We have to have, and that also went to bonding, so it does have approval to be bonded. So Craig Mansfield's running that, and the state's not gonna be ready to give us, to cut a purchase order to Motorola or whoever we're going to. So he's gotta forfeit that ARPA money, and we're gonna have to bond for that project when it comes to fruition. So that $287,000, now I think they're going to Board of Finance Monday night to reappropriate that money to pave Trowbridge Road. Because in her budget, she got her road reclamation and everything cut. So that's gonna kind of give her back some money, and we can spend it. She could do it this fall. It's gonna be a done deal. The money's gonna be spent. If we don't allocate it and hard allocate it by December 31st, we lose it as a town.
So that's great, thank you for sharing that. And that only accelerates our need to pick out consultant before the end in the next 2 months, right?
Right.
For this,
I'm even
not
concerned about
anything to
matching.
do with the TIF, but.
Right. I'm even concerned about the matching because, for that 15,000, because you're gonna have to get on the stick with a company to get moving on that.
And that information is important, but it's not necessarily connected to the TIF, because other than that, we have to get this TIF decision made.
Correct. I just wanted to point out that the money doesn't just go back into the general fund
Yeah, no.
to be used somewhere else. The town as a whole loses it if we don't spend it. So they're not gonna lose it. So if you're not gonna spend it, they're gonna take it to spend it on something else, so the town benefits from all the ARPA money.
And all I'm asking the rest of the board to consider is to let's wait until, we have until September, we have another meeting coming. Let's wait till we have a little bit more fact on exactly what we're deciding.
Yeah, we gotta chase down this grant approval.
Right.
That's the other part, right? We know we have to do that. That's one of the additional finance things. But as far as the TIF, I don't think we're prepared tonight to make a decision on it because we're not looking at all the facts.
That's fair.
And we should also consult with the Selectman's office to see if it might make sense for even if, because if these monies are being allocated, maybe these other economic development projects would be helpful and they would like to have this because we moved so far along. Because if they go back and never try to do a TIF, they're gonna start from square one all over again. And so we did all this legwork. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of work involved establishing, you're gonna rehire a consultant. So we have the policy in place. We already did that part. And so if we came out in the beginning at the gate and decided we didn't want one at all and never pursued it and didn't spend any money, that's fine. But we're so far along that I think we have to at least consider it. And let's wait until that next meeting to make that decision.
Bill, can I ask you a question? The work that's been done so far has basically been relevant to the village. All of the interviews and all of that. Wouldn't that have to be done? If they started focusing on Mudas or the Four Corners, wouldn't that have to be done again?
Some of it, of course. But the actual
But that's an
written-
expense, it's an additional.
It's gonna be expense, but we've already allocated funding. We've already spent money on getting a policy pretty close along that could be the official policy for the town of East Haddam, that if they're trying to attract, I mean, it may never be the thing, but we could at least show progress that we were open-minded to working with someone. And to your point, Jim, maybe it is just a discounting on taxes late, saying we're gonna lower your taxes for so. Maybe it is conversations like that. We already have that in place. I'm sure you guys know. We already do that for businesses. Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't, but we're not we're not seeing the development come in, so we don't know what we need to do is that carrot. And the TIF, just saying it, might be the carrot.
You also, though, can spend all the money to get the TIF policy, and then the townspeople have to approve the damn thing. I mean, if that ever went to a referendum, that's thousands more, and they could say no. And
Yeah, I'm not
I'm
sure.
just saying, I mean, nothing's fixed.
I'm not
even-
sure that we have to go to the town with a policy.
I believe it has to be. I
I
think
think
read
if we
that.
were to implement the TIF, then we
No,
would
I
have.
think the policy has to be approved.
The policy will ultimately be approved by, we don't know for sure because we can't answer that question right now because it's got to be approved by a regulatory body. It might be the selectmen, right? They might be able to approve it as a policy and not necessarily have to bring it to referendum. I don't know the actual process to get it approved as a policy. It was much less than approving a TIF plan with someone. And that has not happened, nor are we discussing it tonight.
All right, we haven't heard from this corner, so if you could share your thoughts. And then we'll move on and we'll just table this until next month or the next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yeah, I'm okay waiting
yeah.
until then.
Yeah, we'll keep it simple. We'll wait for more information.
All right, very good. Well, thanks for that. Is there other business that people want to talk about right now?
Well, understanding that these two things are very much decoupled from one another, I did want to also, though, ask about what our discrete next steps are for the RFP process for the planning consultant that we will hire with our SHPO grant funding. Understanding we have a timeline that we have to do that process under.
Wasn't considering that timeline, which I think accelerates everything.
Well, what I heard, though, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we just have to have selected and contracted with the
So
consultant
that
by
they
the end
can
of the
send a
year.
Purchase order to
Right.
them. And then the funds are locked into that project.
So we just have
So
to
we
have
need to make progress with reviewing and,
soliciting proposals, reviewing proposals, and making a selection and
that
doing the
doesn't
contracting
happen
process
overly
before.
quick.
Yeah,
And then create a PO.
right, before the end of the year.
so just like in the environmental space,
Great point.
and even on that, we need to do an we need an RFQ or an RFP, but we need to do it for a consultant.
Yes.
And we don't have a lot of time. 2 months goes by like that.
Oh, yeah, sure does.
How long of a response time did you give for the environmental RFP?
Well, we've been working on it for over a year now, so, you know,
But I just mean, what
When you
response time
initially
did you give
did
them?
it.
to
Once you
res-
sent out the RFQ,
it was months, you know, between putting the request out there and then getting bids in, interviewing with people. You have to spend time with them.
Yeah,
Then you have to review, make a decision, come back to this group, make your recommendation, and then this group has to approve it.
but did we give them 4 weeks to respond to the RFQ?
Linda, I forget, was it?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember if it was 4 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, it was probably a little more than that, probably 6.
They wanted us to decide right away, though. That was their comment.
Right, we went through that
When are
this
you gonna
last.
decide? I'm like, what?
Right.
The hardest part was getting them all to come at the same day at a particular time, because they're all busy business people. I mean, they've got schedules.
so it
It
seems,
was high vacation time period. We were having them come in.
I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to like administer the process if that helps us. And I can, as a first step in doing that, I can set a schedule for what the steps are and when we need to have each step complete. I'm wondering whether there are like example RFPs that we can draw from, and I also don't know, I mean, I have a couple firms that come to mind, but I'm wondering how we as a group want to develop our long list of who we would send the RFP out to beyond posting it. Is that something?
Just so you know, I put it on the DAS website.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm figuring you're gonna want an engineering firm. So there are thousands of, it goes out to that whole lot of list. I mean, the DAS website has a big engineering list.
Yeah, I
So
think
it
it's.
goes
But it
out
might
to
be
all
an
of
The
them.
key to what your
Need a
question is,
planner, though, right?
would be to,
Planning, not
Shayna and Victoria had some good ideas on that, so they would be cooperating in that realm to help you out with that.
Okay,
They would be a first step, and as far as writing one, I don't know if there's any necessary rules, but I actually put one together for, I was bidding on, I'm trying to bid on being a financial advisor for another municipality. And they said, I don't know the first thing about hiring a financial advisor, running an RFP. And I said, I'll help you. And I went into ChatGPT and it took me 15 minutes, so.
We have examples of different things.
Yeah.
I mean, really, really good one.
yeah,
I put them out, so just,
You could take her example and run with it and
Yeah.
and you
so.
gotta just tweak it to what fits your need.
yeah,
But at least it gives you, are you gonna do an RFP, RFQ, you just gonna do an RFP? What do you wanna do? Do you wanna get qualifications, say from however many firms submit? Do you wanna then narrow it down to, like we did for the brownfield, and you narrow it down to no more than 4 firms? Then you have those firms bring their proposals in a shortlist interview. I mean, that's another process.
yeah. I mean, I would say that just based on the fact that we have a tight timeline, that we could just skip straight to an RFP and get
RFP.
qualifications.
Well,
and-
the only thing is it's state money, so I don't know how the SHPO works. They're a state agency, but DEP, I'm thinking about water pollution control authorities, when they get grants and things like that, when they hire a consultant, they have to do qualification-based selection, so they have to
And a lot
go
of
through that
will be
QBS process.
That'll be in the contract that we get from SHPO, because I just did a SHPO grant regarding an archaeological thing at Devil's Hop Yard. So they'll send us a contract that'll give us like parameters of what we have to do. I don't think yours is gonna be big enough to have to, go into the single,
It's a
state
planning
audit
grant,
or-
so it's not like
Right.
an implementation.
Small amount.
It'll tell us if we need Title VI requirements, a lot of that stuff.
The challenge we ran into this time of year was getting people here because a lot of their staff was on vacation. So we ended up having to push it out a couple of weeks, where we wanted to kind of speed it up and be prepared for the previous meeting. We actually had to wait. So caution there.
Linda, for our purposes, couldn't the one that was done for revitalization, the RFP, be used, I mean, just the basics of it for an
Yeah, well,
RFP?
you
Probably the
did-
same
You
one.
did that one a little bit, yeah, you did a separate RFQ, and then you did a separate RFP.
Yeah. Well, my next question would be, couldn't you request qualifications in the RFP?
Well,
Yeah,
In other words, they would have to state their qualifications.
We've done, that's what you
We
did
did
in the
that.
brownfield.
We did that.
It was like a two-part thing.
It was an RFQ, RFP.
Yeah, I mean, that would
Might
save some
speed it
time.
up.
But yeah, I mean, you could do that, it does, you know, it all depends on how you do it, like, we just did one for, an engineering firm for the bike trail, too, so that's an example of one that I could send you, you know, as well, you guys gotta tweak it, cause I'm process, I have nothing to do with what you want done. You know, that's how John and I kinda work, I'm like, well, this is how we do it, you tell me what you want.
Okay, well, so if you don't mind sending me a few of those examples, if it seems like it makes sense to everybody, I can take a first pass at tailoring one to the scope that was in the grant proposal that they sent me.
And I'm glad to help you if I can
Okay,
with what I learned.
Do you have contact with the grant people?
I do, you forwarded me an
Yeah,
email, right?
that-
So I can reach out to her directly. Sorry if this is a dumb question, but what is our arrangement or agreement with them? Like, what are they expecting their role to be in the soliciting of proposal? Like, it's sort of getting past us at this point, right? Like, they've gotten us the grant and they're,
Yeah, and I think their intention is to hopefully work on other grants and continue working with us on a per grant.
but have we asked them yet to try to get a grant award letter from SHPO? Is that something that has already been
I
requested?
have an email from Victoria that
Okay.
she just sent me yesterday, I haven't emailed her back. Because she's looking for, we had to fill out some forms and I have to send them to Mary Dunn at SHPO,
Okay,
to get that, and my plan is to do that, tomorrow, ask Mary, okay, when are we gonna get the award letter, and kind of see how we're moving with this? And then, you know, answer Victoria back with the questions that she has.
okay. Well, in the meantime, I think I can do the homework of getting a first draft of an RFP together, which we can then review, and at least we'll then be ready to like press go quickly after getting the award letter and start the process.
Sounds great.
Okay.
And then rather than waiting for the next meeting, is that something that could be circulated and we can all comment on it if we need to, just as it's ready, rather than waiting for the next
It's fine with me.
meeting?
I think the executive committee, should be meeting. And if you could use that as your suspense date, maybe you could circulate it for everybody and then the executive, are we allowed to make a decision on something like that based on the size of our group? We can make a decision on something like that, right?
Yeah, we will have an assemblage of less than a quorum of the commission to meet and consider what needs to be done. I think if we're gonna take any action, it would have to come back to the whole commission for a decision. But if we have to have a special meeting to do that, whether it's for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then we can certainly do that.
Can sign off be done by email in a quorum way?
We could have a virtual meeting, I believe. So yeah, that might be a better way to do it, just have a remote meeting. Although we may have to have public input. So it'd have to be like a Zoom meeting where the public is invited to it.
How it works
It's just
best.
the RFP. Did you guys have to do that with us? I don't remember voting on the RFP.
You did, we actually did it in the meeting, in our redevelopment meeting.
We did talk about the actual RFP.
Yep.
Okay.
But it took a lot of time.
It did.
But it would be good if you were gonna have like a remote meeting, like I could do a Zoom, so the people that needed to come in via Zoom, but if I had one person here, and then this becomes the Zoom room, then the public is here and they can hear what's going on.
The
So we have
Zoom
to have a
room-
public meeting. Why not have a public executive meeting? And just get it done.
You can't make votes and stuff outside of,
yeah.
outside of the meeting.
Right.
Outside of the meeting forum.
Right.
You shouldn't even be doing a lot of chatting back and forth. You can disseminate information, but you really shouldn't be communicating as a commission back and forth outside of the meeting realm. You can tell I got beat up by FOI.
Andrew, would probably make sense just to have a special meeting.
Yeah, we could do
A
that.
very brief
Right, yep,
special meeting.
yep, if we get to that point, yep, we could do that. We
Maybe
could do that on
just do it
24 hours'
here.
notice. And all we need is a quorum. And a unanimous decision if we only have 6.
Now, you're gonna get straight, Andrew. The only thing is, it's what Linda's telling us. I mean, I wanna get straight for sure that we know what money's gotta be spent when, you know, I mean, where is it coming from? Let's get straight where it's all gonna go, and counting on you, cause I have no idea. I mean, Linda knows, but
Linda knows
we need to
everything.
know for sure just
Yes.
exactly which money gets spent where and what our timeline is on some of this stuff, because these are.
You can do a
money's coming from
you can
different
do a statement
agencies.
for
They
us,
all have
right?
a little different.
Valerie will. Valerie was actually waiting for you. You said you were gonna touch base with her and get all the financial stuff. She was kind of waiting for you, because I said, they need their budgets. They need to see their operating budget, how much they have there. They need to see their TIF budget, how much they have there. Because me throwing out numbers,
Right.
like we talked at the last meeting, I know what they are, you know, but she could show you on a sheet, you had 60,000, you've allocated 42 to the TIF, but you've only spent 18. So you have the difference of 18 and 60 that you have to put somewhere, or it's gonna go to another project.
Yes.
You have 75,000 for environmental. Now, when you get to environmental, that, you know, the plan to use that, you've got a $200,000 grant based on what you got for proposals. There's enough money in the 200,000, so that's 75. If you don't allocate it somewhere with a purchase order,
I was supposed to reach out to, I just want to validate, I think I was supposed to reach out to her regarding the money that we didn't spend in the 2024, 23,
23, 24.
4
I
budget.
think that we should have a special meeting in 2
You
weeks.
can't use it. I
To-
already
to-
asked her
if
that.
was the
no- For
question I
nothing
was
else,
supposed
but
to
to
ask.
understand the finances and to check in on the
Yeah,
progress.
so Valerie's the one that you need to sit down and talk with her.
Date, what would that
And,
date
you know,
be?
So moved.
22nd.
I do my part, but you know what I mean?
All right.
Right, but the thing that was on that list was to talk to her about getting the money
Yeah, I
that we were
mentioned it to her,
able
I said, is there any way?
22nd.
We calling that a special meeting?
Special meeting on the 22nd to talk about finances and
And review a draft of the plan RFP.
grant issues. Is there anything else that we should put on that? Should we put the TIF update on that?
Yes, I think it's a good idea.
Because we won't be able to revise the, if we don't have the information, we don't have to talk about it, but if we don't put it on the agenda,
Then we can't talk about it.
then we can't talk about it.
So August 22nd?
Yes,
So, yeah, I already have a big meeting in here that night.
We
So
could do it, we could use another room.
I don't have this, so I have to check if meeting room 3, which is the cafe room, would be
Yeah.
available.
Okay.
So I can run and do that and
Okay.
see if it's available for you.
okay.
Thank you. So what did I say? Finance status, grant status, and TIF status.
And I'll use that as my deadline for a draft of the RFP and a set of,
So we're gonna add that to the agenda too, the Caitlin's
I think
draft.
that comes under the draft status.
grant status.
All right. I'm sure we can find a place to meet.
Go to your cottage.
All right, so our public left.
I can give you meeting room 3.
Okay.
Oh, good.
We'll all have to figure out where to sit in a new room.
No,
Yeah, we
that'd be
all
good.
will.
That could create some
Isn't it so
brainstorming.
funny how everybody takes the same seat?
Yeah.
Except for Bill, he changed his seat.
I screwed everybody up today.
Uh,
There was that big screen
7
up there.
o'clock? Is it still 7 o'clock?
Yes, yep. There's no issue with public involvement being remote if we meet in there? I mean,
We don't have to ever do public remote, it's just a nice way to do it, it's not required.
excellent, thank you for that.
Yeah, if you're having a public meeting and you're gonna be there, we don't have to do anything remote.
Okay,
The only thing I cannot do in that room is if any of you want to attend via Zoom,
Yeah.
because you can't be there, that's not a Zoom room. The only Zoom rooms are here.
okay,
So
understood.
The committee would have to
fine.
be there in person. The only thing you could do is call somebody out on a cell phone and then like hold the cell phone open line for the whole meeting. That's the best I could do in that room.
Right.
Because these are the only 2 that are set up for Zoom.
Yeah, so if you could get us our financial status,
I will commit to talking with
Yeah,
Valerie.
Okay.
he's talking- 'cause
All right.
I-
I'll
I
commit to
told
the,
Val
I'll
that she
commit
really
to
wants to meet
the
with you
finance
guys to-
and getting more insight on the
Okay.
TIF.
All
I'll
right.
commit to both of those.
Yeah, she wants to really spell it out for you.
okay,
Okay.
well, if she could attend the meeting, that'd be great too.
Yeah, probably not. She's
Okay.
8 months pregnant. And
Oh.
has two other little ones running around it.
Oh, never mind.
So that probably won't happen.
Okay, well, Bill
I will
will be
speak
our
with it.
messenger on that then. That sounds great. All right, do we have a motion to move into executive session to talk about the environmental consultant?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you, Linda.
We gotta turn off the,
Oh, yeah, yep, you do. Just hit the stop, where it says stop recording on the bottom.
system off.
No, not yet.
Thank you.
What you gotta do first, you gotta hit stop recording.
Okay.